Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. Welcome to our AIPAD Talk series. Let's adjust this for a moment. My name is Sondra Russick. I am the chair of the Education Committee, also part of Scheinbaum and Russick Gallery. But I am really here in a wonderful way to introduce this fantastic talk this afternoon, and I appreciate you all for being here. We have Michael Stipe and Drew Sawyer here. Thank you. We're very excited to have Michael talking about his work today. He, as you know, is a multifaceted artist working in photography, sound, film, music, all across all mediums. And we're very excited to have him. He has published multiple publications, and just his work is wonderful to see, innovative. You can also see it at Jackson Fine Art. When we're done with this talk, please go visit their booth and take a peek at what they have there. He has exhibited in prestigious institutions and galleries around the world. His first major institutional show was at ICA Milan in December of 2023. He also has numerous publications out, and I believe the most recent was Even Birds Gave Pause, that came out in 2023 as well. And then interviewing him today is Drew Sawyer, who is an art historian and curator who holds the title of the Sondra Gilman Curator of Photography at the Whitney Museum of Art. And prior to that, he was at the Brooklyn Museum of Art and the Museum of Modern Art. And I am just extremely thrilled to have them both here and to talk about this work. And I hope you all enjoy this talk and enjoy the rest of our talk series and AIPAD together. Thank you so much.
Great, well, thank you for that introduction, and I'm really happy to be here in conversation with you today.
Me too, you.
And thank you all for joining. Well, since she mentioned that you have work in the fair, I thought maybe we could just start out, since we're in this context, and you could tell us a little bit about...
I want to talk about the couch.
Some of the work. I mean, the couch, yeah.
Because, I mean, I agreed to do this today for exactly 3 reasons. One, if they could reach out to the Kubrick archive and pull the couches from the milk bar. And so they managed to do that. And then I would only do it in my favorite room in Manhattan, which is this incredible space. And particularly, I love, as you're leaving, you can check out the treatment on the windows, which looks like metal, but in fact is leather that's woven together like a chainmail. I've been to several things in this room, and this might be the most exciting. But the third reason, and the real reason that I'm here, is that we finally get to talk one-on-one.
Yeah.
That's exciting. So thank you, Drew, for saying this.
Of course. Yeah, we did a conversation with Ryan McGinley earlier this year, which was fun.
Yeah, that was great.
But yeah, now one-on-one.
Here we are, just the two of us, dancing in front of my favorite fireplace. So let's go.
But yeah, so the work in the fair, I'm curious just to hear a little bit about the selection for folks that have been by the booth at Jackson Fine Art. It's a kind of mixture of portraits and other works. I'm just curious, from your perspective, the kind of selection.
Yeah, I think, well, I had a show at Jackson Fine Arts in Atlanta over the winter, and it was really beautifully curated and put together, and I'm really proud of the work that we did together there in Atlanta. And this is an extension of that. It's based on the last photo book that I did through Damiani, which is the publisher in Bologna, and it's portraiture. The idea is that I'm trying to expand on the idea of what a portrait is or can be in our post-digital 21st century. Here we are a quarter of a way through the 21st century, and I think it's important to try to kind of like push the boundaries of what is possible as portraiture. So in one of the images, a lot of them are just people, and not just people, but very specific people and beautiful images of people. But there's a picture of roses in a vase on a table. And for me, it's a portrait of a moment in time. And it's one that it's specific to me and to my experience, but I really like work that allows for anyone to be able to read into it. And so in that particular image, I wanted something that is universal in its appeal, but also in its capturing an exact moment. You know, roses, the reason we like cut flowers is because they're really there in the moment and then they die. And that's really sad and upsetting, but here's this moment captured. And so I wanted it to be a portrait of that moment. So anyway, I'm just kind of trying to expand on that. There's a larger piece, I believe the larger one is it's the Lee Friedlander, right? Is it? The Brancusi, okay. Yeah, so there's an image of Brancusi, who I'm, his atelier, who I'm just obsessed with. And then there's an image that is an homage to Lee Friedlander, who's a hero of mine.
Yeah.
And I just met another hero of mine. Roger Ballin presented himself to me in the other room as I walked in here to get mic'd. And wow, what an incredible artist he is. And what a pleasure to meet him in person.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned, or you kind of evoked, right, photography in our moment now, and I think about portraiture in our era of self-exposure. Maybe some people would say overexposure. So yeah, what is photography and especially portraiture mean for you, or what can one do with portraiture in an era where everyone is willingly exposing themselves on social media or other platforms?
Well, it's late capitalist tendency, I think, or an easy understanding would be to just acknowledge that we have gone from a consumer society into ourselves being the final product, and so social media has made that entirely possible and has actually elevated it to this almost, to be very crass and kind of like grotesque art form that provides us with public figures who are grotesque celebrities, really, who are known for nothing other than being known or being, on TikTok, which I like TikTok a lot, and I like Lil Nas X, for instance, is one of the great things that came from a 15-second. There's an entire career spawned from a kind of joke country song, and it's manifested itself in someone who's really immensely talented and unexpectedly of the moment that we're in. It started for me, to answer your question, I think, Drew, it started with an idea right around the turn of the century where I felt like sculpture, like portraiture through sculpture, was not what it should be for where we were. It felt like a lot of what was being done and what is being done is copies of Greek and Roman ideas of beauty and also just the presentation of a human through a bust. And so I commenced to try to introduce a more 3D version of a portrait through that, and I failed miserably at it. So I went back to the thing that I've known since I was 14, which is photography. And it's a place where I'm just very, very comfortable doing what I do, which I've had to think about this a lot, and because I recognize that what I do is not that extraordinary within the world of imagery and within the world of photography. It's not extraordinary beyond me or people that like me for other things that I've done or that I do. But what does it have to offer everyone, and where am I going with this? It'll come back. Sorry, I got lost.
I am curious. Some of the prints have folds, and I'm just curious to hear you talk a little bit about like the intention behind the folds.
Yeah, I remembered where I was going, which was I realized, and part of it was in anticipation of this conversation, because I know that a lot of people in this room are really well versed in imagery and photography and really know what they're doing and talking about. And I'm, I feel like a teenager in regards to my knowledge. I really love photography, but I don't know that I could ramble on about it for long. But I think what I really do is elevate the mundane and the average, and introduce a question, which is why would this person choose or edit any or all of the images that they've taken down to this one? Why is this presented to me on a wall, or why is this in a book, or why is this on a social media feed? Yeah, I think in a long tradition of people who have done the same thing. Part of what I'm trying to do is really elevate the very mundane and the very simple parts of our lives and look at it from a perspective of wonder and curiosity, and that puts it into how I perceive the world and how I move through the world and how I look at things, which is sometimes microcosmic and often microcosmic. It's always microcosmic, and it's never altogether pleasant. But it does create for me immense curiosity and wonder, and it also makes it really hard to carry on a regular conversation. Because I'm just always going, wow, look at that, wow, look at that, wow, look at that. Even in dead stopped traffic on the FDR, I can find like 14 things to interrupt a conversation with.
But back to the folds.
Sorry, there we are. I had posters in my room when I was a teenager, and I'm obsessed with posters. I just think they're so beautiful, and I like the idea of, I don't like additions so much in art, in contemporary art, and I like the idea that things are available to everyone. So I decided to make my pieces a little less precious by folding them like a poster, which is something that I grew up loving, and it feels available to everyone. Yeah, and the pricing also is available. To some people's chagrin, the pricing is available to just about everyone. I like the idea that you can have something of beauty or something that provokes conversation or interest in your life, and you don't have to. It doesn't have to be 3 months' rent or 12 months' rent to have that. Yeah.
I mean, obviously you entered the kind of cultural zeitgeist. Most people are familiar with you first through your music, REM.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that you began making photographs when you were a teenager, and you studied visual arts at University of Georgia. So I'm curious, was there space for you? I mean, of course you were a visual artist. You were making music videos. It was such a, you were working and collaborating with artists for album covers, and that was such a huge part of what you were doing. But I'm curious, when you were making photographs over that time period too for yourself, did you always see it as part of like an artistic practice, or was it more of a private kind of enterprise pursuit?
Most of my adult life, I've been in a state of really elevated adrenaline because of my former job, and because I was born, hyperactive, and and my brain does work a little differently. So photography provides for me. I don't like my handwriting at all. I really don't like my signature even. I've never liked it. I don't like my speaking voice. I do like my singing voice a real lot. Thank you. But photography is my way of. I don't keep a journal or a diary. I would look at it and just cringe because of my handwriting or because of the way that I often express myself when I'm not expressing myself through pop lyrics. So anyway, but my life is fascinating even to me. I stand back and I go, what the fuck? Like, this is just unbelievable. The places that I find myself and the incredible privilege that I have to meet my heroes. You can sometimes meet your heroes and they're not assholes, and that's such a great thing, and sometimes they are, but we'll put those guys behind the couch. Most of them are really cool, and you just have to know how to approach them to not scare them. So photography became for me my diary and my way of remembering this very fast-paced, adrenalized, extraordinary life that I've moved through since I was, 19, really. I started at 14. I started at the age of 14. I discovered music at 15. So photography really is my first boyfriend, girlfriend, lover, and something that allowed for me a way to take all those things that I'm admiring and looking at and thinking about and putting them into something solid, something that is something that I can touch. Even you don't want to touch a negative, but and now you can't touch a digital image, but yeah, it just places it for me in a way that I can go back and go, oh yeah, that happened, and those people were there, and this was thrilling, and there's a great portrait, there's a great picture, there's something that would mean something to someone beyond the people that were in that room at that moment. Yeah.
I'm curious if you ever draw from your photographs, your kind of archive, while you were writing music. Was that something that, or was it, do you ever see a connection between photography and music for?
Yeah, a lot of the, there's a book coming out that I shouldn't really even talk about, but it's a compilation of lyrics, but it's going to be grouped in like the number of songs that go back to the work of David Lynch, and how much I took from his imagery and moments in some of his films that really, we're going back to 1980, like really profoundly altered and changed me and my way of moving through the world and thinking about things. And so, yeah, in photography, let me think. I'll go back to Lee Friedlander. Again, people that, my obsession with Joseph Kudelka and not knowing much about gypsies or refugees or people that, for whatever reason, political or environmental or otherwise, are in communities that are constantly moving. And then that inspiring or influencing work that I did that's more, it's quite obtuse, but it's there in some of the lyrics. There's songs that are extremely political, and so that imagery finds its way through. Salgado, as well. You don't really think about where diamonds come from until you've seen one of those pictures of the mines with these hundreds and hundreds of people that look like ants, which I'm stealing from a movie, actually. The people, they look like ants. Can anyone? No, okay. It's the Coen brothers, and it's Jennifer Jason Leigh talking to Tim Robbins. The people, they look like ants. It's a way to deflect. Can you hear me? Oh, say that again. The mic is here. My voice, weirdly, you can't hear it very well? Maybe I'll bring it up here. Yeah, okay. I'll try to articulate, and I'll try to speak a little slower. I'm sorry for that. No problem. Weirdly, my voice doesn't, microphones don't pick up my voice very well, which is, considering my former job, my current job is quite strange.
I'm curious to hear you talk a little bit about, again, kind of expanding on that. I think of your music, and there's so much mystery and ambiguity while there's still kind of an approach to storytelling, but it's not fully narrative, right? There's not a kind of fixed meaning or narrative. And so just like expanding on that, I think for me that's the relationship between a photograph, right? Which is like a moment in time, but can never be, right, fully narrativized. It requires some kind of framework, whether it's text or some kind of framework to provide the meaning, right? And I think the same is maybe true of your music, and I don't know if you see that kind of connection there.
We came up at the same time as MTV, and my former band, R.E.M., started in the early 1980s, and MTV started in the early 1980s, and then the visual presentation of the work became a very important part of music. And I knew already that it was important, but I was kicking against the traces. I was being contrarian in not acknowledging into our fifth album that sex does sell. Thank you, Madonna. And so I took my shirt off for the first time for a band photo, and the record doubled in its sales. I was 27 and pretty hot, as it turned out. But I was contrarian in the way that I approached these things. That said, I'm trying to think. The first video that we made was really a moving still image that I shot with a 16 millimeter Beaulieu camera at a abandoned quarry in Bloomington, Indiana, and black and white. And I shot a single roll of film, mimicking the work of my great painting and drawing professor, James Herbert, at the University of Georgia. I processed the film. I looked at it, I turned it upside down and backwards and ran the words of the song over the top of it in a subtitle. And that became, our gesture. That song was the first song that was the first video, the first song that really got us wide airplay on MTV, and then concurrently on college radio, which then expanded to more commercial radio. A song called Fall on Me in 1986. Yeah. But it was really a single, it was one of the photographs that's now at the Jackson Fine Arts booth. But I just happened to use a Beaulieu to take that one picture. Did that make sense? Did I answer your question?
A little bit, not
Sorry.
quite.
I did eat lunch.
I guess I was
am
more
here. I'm in the moment.
Yeah, no, I was more so interested, I guess I was trying to ask, maybe I didn't ask it very well.
Okay,
but,
try again.
Yeah, this kind of idea of ambiguity in art, right? And that can be through music and lyrics, where you're creating a story, but maybe not creating a clear narrative.
Sure.
And of course, photographs do that. Pictures are worth 1,000 words. Photographs, right, usually require some kind of caption to provide additional meaning. So I was curious if you saw a relationship between the way music can work, right, that it can provide mystery and ambiguity in a way that photographic images often do as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't really differentiate between those mediums. I mean, the only thing about music is that it really touches our hearts and our brains in different ways. And so you can evoke unbelievable emotion with a simple chord change. You go from a major to a minor, and everyone knows that that's going to make you sad. And so I use that a lot. And it works. It works well with the way that I write, and it works well with my voice. You don't have to be, and I'm going to reference another hero who I've met, and I hope this doesn't sound name-droppy, but Lindsay Addario is a great war journalist, photographer, who takes photographs of people in very extreme situations and puts her life on the line in order to get those photographs. And through her work, I think brings about change, actual policy change, and an understanding of our place in the world as a superpower and as an empire and blah blah blah. But where am I going with this? You don't have to be Lindsay Addario to take a photograph that has impact or has effect, and it doesn't have to be tragic. It can be something that brings joy or delight, or it can be something that makes you think. Again, as I was mentioning earlier, I'll use an example. Wolfgang Tillmans is a great inspiration to me and my boyfriend, and he's a great friend, and he, from time to time, would choose a subject matter that I was just confounded by. For a while, it was clothes thrown over banisters or dropped on the floor, and it would be intermixed at the time with very clear portraits that he'd taken of interesting people, or great photographs, like easily regarded like that. Everyone agrees that's a great picture. He moved on from that to more currently pictures of car headlights. And I was like, why is Wolfgang, like, here's someone who I really admire. I know how smart he is. I know what's going on inside his brain. Why are we looking at pictures of car headlights? Like, what is this about? And what he was doing was he started noticing, I think it started with the Transformers movies. Cars started looking more and more aggressive and more dastardly and evil, and the headlights also started looking really mean. Mm-hmm. And he acknowledged that, and so it took me about a year before I finally was like, Wolfgang, what the fuck? Like, what's with the headlights? And he was like, well, he explained it in his very German way, and he's very generous in that regard. But I got it, I got it. Like, so that's quite obtuse and that's quite oblique, But when you have that aha moment, then it makes sense. That's why this great artist is focusing on this thing. Now, I'm not putting myself in the same category as him, certainly, but.
I mean, it seems like you feel like art, whether it's music, photography, it's important that there's room for interpretation then, right? There's room
Yes.
for the listener, the viewer to kind of have space to create that meaning.
Yes. I don't want neo-Nazis wrongly interpreting my work. I think that goes without saying, but yes, it's absolutely imperative to me that my egomaniacal imprint isn't the only thing that the only way that someone is able to interpret anything that I do. I really want two things. One, I want everything that I do to be available to anyone, whatever your knowledge of contemporary photography or the history of photography or portraiture or anything, politics, whatever it is. I want whatever I'm doing to be available to you on some level, right? And then if you want to dig deeper, there are things there to dig into. And I forgot what the second thing was. Sorry.
We'll come back.
Okay.
I mean, this maybe leads to another question, which is, you've always been very outspoken and political and activist in some ways, even though your art leaves room open for mystery and beauty and is not typically overtly political in like a legible way, maybe. So I'm curious just like how you tend to balance those and what you think the responsibility of the artist is in moments of crisis, both now, but in your time as an artist.
I would rewind a little from what you just said. I think just as a queer artist, that a lot of the work that I do falls within a category of queerness or a perspective that is not typical.
That was going to be my next question.
Okay, there we go. So sadly, that's a political gesture in 2025 in the America that we're currently moving through. And we are moving through it. I just want to say, like, I'm ultimately glass half full guy. This too shall pass. We have to remember that in the darkest moments. And we have to encourage love and support for those of us who are more likely to fall between the cracks. And we have to be vigilant about that. And we have to also remind ourselves that if you have to take a few days off, turn off the fucking news, stop looking at your feed, take a little break, but then come back to it because we need you. We need every single person to get through this. And we will. We'll get through it. We might be radically changed by the time we emerge, but I feel that ultimately we have a lot of really shitty karma as Americans, but we're working through that, and I think that we'll arrive somewhere that's actually better than okay.
And would you have advice for younger artists in this moment of what it means to make work right now? Artists who might be frustrated or feel defeated or not know exactly what their responsibility is, what their response should be.
I wouldn't dare try to advise younger artists right now because I think they're doing from what I see and from what I hear, particularly from friends of mine who are educators, they're doing just fine.
Yeah.
They're a little flummoxed by what the hell we're on about, but and I'm speaking generationally, of course, but I think they're doing just fine.
The kids are all right.
The kids are all right.
Yeah. Well, to get to the question I was going to ask about this kind of queerness, which you brought up, and I think as somebody who's slightly younger than you, and of course I grew up in a small town in Iowa, so my access, right, was like MTV to culture, and I think one thing I always admired about you is that your kind of perspective was queer, right? It didn't read to me even when I was young, like a kid, as maybe a gay identitarian kind of identity. So I'm curious, what it meant for you, even at the time, but like reflecting back on having a position that didn't read as what most people in America would have read as gay,
right,
rather as kind of queer.
Right. Well, just to put perspective on it, and no one really needs this, but I did come up, I came up during the time of AIDS, so that was a particularly difficult time to be queer or gay, and so that's always there in the background, and it's still here with us, of course. But I also, REM is and was and always will be for people, and so I was one of those 4 people, each with a huge amount of respect for each other and for the expressions of each of our expressions. And so I'm the queer one, and the other guys, relatively speaking, are very straight. And so, why was that other? Oh, I'll have to use that one again. That was good. But they're certainly queer adjacent. But as the person who was doing all of the visual work for the band, from videos to T-shirts to album covers to photographs to choosing the photographers, and then editing the images, all that ran through me. I was representing a democratic group of 4. So, and so parts of me were absolutely there, but parts of them were as well. It presented as a whole. That said, Losing My Religion, our biggest song ever, and the one that catapulted me to international stardom, thank you, which I always wanted as a teenager. And when I finally got there, I was like, that was hard work. Like, I don't know that this isn't really what I thought it was going to be. But by the time we got there, I was okay, But it is, the video for that is like the gayest thing ever made. I mean, it is, as Homer Simpson would say, gay, 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 gay. And it was banned in certain parts of the world. I mean, for its, supposedly for how it approached the church. But we all know what it was really banned for. And I'm really proud of that video and its place in that world of commercial imagery. I don't know where this is going.
I kind of asked about, reflecting what it meant for you at the time, or now reflecting back on it, to have a positionality that was kind of going against the grain of even what dominant ideas of male homosexuality would have looked like, say, in the 1980s. And again, you gave context for even thinking about the early days of the AIDS crisis. And the kind of images that most people, again, growing up in a small town in Iowa, would have been exposed to, and what that meant.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm thinking of lyrics, and I'm thinking of things that I did through the music. Is that what you're referencing? Yeah. Yeah. Because I would quite often, not quite often, I made a rule about words that should never be used in pop songs. The word soul. Like, just don't go there. It's bad. There were so many love songs. I wanted to write songs that were maybe about love, but didn't mention love. So that went on until maybe the 6th album. And then I wanted the broadest appeal of any pop singer ever. So I was using non-gender terms, which became quite anthemic at some point in the 1980s, and everything became political because it wasn't me and her or him and I, it was us and them and we. And so, a song like Disturbance at the Heron House becomes this actual call to march on the Capitol. And that's what it was. But it became much more powerful through that. I eventually, and then earlier songs, I referenced, what a young man smells like, I mean, it's a terrible story. I don't want to tell that one, but I basically it's when I was writing on life experience, and before I started writing basically fiction, because I didn't know how to write pop lyrics, and so, I wrote about a couple of swingers who were really making intense moves on me, and that worked its way into a song about a dream that I had about a single from the Rolling Stones with Brian Jones, and a photograph of them, which was the cover of the single, and they're on a dock, and the photograph is shot from above, and they're all looking up, and Brian is particularly beatific, I think I said that right, and beautiful and blonde. And I woke up, and Peter Buck and I were living in the same house at the time. I think it was 1981, so I was 21 years old. And I said, Peter, I just had this dream about this song, this single released by the Rolling Stones, and this is what the album, this is what the single cover looks like. And the name of the song is Pretty Persuasion. And he said, write a song. So I did. So I wrote a song, and it was about being queer. I changed gender in a lot of the early songs, like the famous statue of Laocoon or Laocoon. I don't know how we say that. But in the song, at the age of 21, I said Laocoon. And I made him a her, because I was being contrarian. That's what you do when you're, a queer 21-year-old, I guess. But Laocoon became a woman, yeah.
Do you, well, I guess I'll move on to actually a different.
Did I answer anything?
I mean, a little bit, but we enjoy the stories.
Okay, we can pull from wherever the train is going. It's kind of it's like that movie. It's like an endless track. So maybe there's something there to go to.
Well, you did mention this kind of tension between like commercialism, right? Which you can experience both in music and of course art, any industry, right? And so, I'm curious in all of the ways you've worked, that you seem to really balance that line between appealing, as you said, and you want your whether it's music, your art, to be accessible to a wide swath of people, to everyone. And so, yeah, I'm just curious to hear, how you feel like you achieve or accomplish that balance between, staying true to your artistic vision and then, also dealing with pressures from the commercial side? Or is that not something you didn't think about?
There was no pressure, no.
Yeah.
No. There's this myth, and I think Hollywood helped bring it on, about how adversarial bands and record companies are. And our record companies knew right away that we were not easy people, and we were going to do exactly what the fuck we wanted to do. And they could try to change course for us, but it never worked. There are regrettable things that happened over the course of 31 years. I feel responsible for all of those regrettable things, whether it was trying too hard to have a song that was a big hit single and didn't become one. And that's always like the most embarrassing fall on your face moment, when you really try and then it just doesn't happen. And so that's awful. But yeah, no, there wasn't that kind of like mythological pressure from big bad corporate guys. I mean, when the time came, and this is another book, they just ignored us. They paid us our fucking money, and they didn't distribute our work. So that happened at some point, but we still did exactly what we wanted.
That's amazing. Right?
It is amazing.
Do you feel like you're obviously you kind of like moved away from music. Did the industry change in a way that you were?
It became so hideous. I mean, it always was, I think, but I never I'm very lucky to have surrounded myself and ourselves with people who could keep those wolves at bay and allow me to focus on what was most important, which was the performance, the songs, the work around it, and so. I signed every piece of paper of every decision ever made, but I didn't have to live with it 24 hours a day, Yeah. So that's good.
But obviously, in the last more than a decade, you've primarily dedicated yourself to visual arts.
Yeah. I stepped away from music. I just had to take a breath. REM was so all-consuming, really all-consuming, and it took 5 or 6 years before I even wanted to listen to music, much less participate in it. And then I came back to it quite accidentally. But in that time, I was very antsy, and of course I needed things to do. And I started focusing on first my archive and working with people that I really admired. The first book that I did with Damiani was with a great artist and a Curator artist, Jonathan Berger. And we pulled from an archive of, I think, who's here? Somewhere. We pulled from an archive of some 40,000 images and brought it down to, I think you're seeing them maybe up there. I'm not sure what's up right now. That's the more recent book. But yeah, it kind of just gives an overview of the work that I've done as a visual artist over the course of 31 years while I was distracting people with music.
I'm curious, yeah, 45,000 photographs is a lot.
Thank you, Jonathan Berger. You're a patient, wonderful person.
What was, yeah, we'll have to, that'll be another talk, because I'm curious what that process was like going through. I've sorted through large archives like that too, and so anyways, Jonathan will have to talk at another time.
I know he's here, I just don't see him. Anyway. Oh, hi. Hey,
yeah,
there he
he's
is.
hiding behind.
Hi, Jonathan, thank you
Yeah.
for coming.
But I'm looking at the time too, and I want to open it up to audience, because I know there's going to be a lot of people who will have questions.
Okay. Yes. Lady. Hi. That's okay.
Apologies. I've heard you talk before about beauty during the pandemic, and I wanted to know what your thoughts are for this moment that we're in about working and thinking about beauty and its value, considering what's going on.
Yeah, I kind of launched into it earlier, and I didn't mean to. I really wanted to talk exclusively about photography today, but that's not how my mind works. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry. Beauty is so important right now because a lot of what we're seeing is really hideous and awful. And I think we can just all agree. Whoever disagrees with me politically, okay, but things are just not going well right now. And we need to have these things that remind us that we are actually quite remarkable and special when we focus on not the shadow part of ourselves, but the when we're facing the campfire or whatever that thing is. Sorry. And yeah, so my work is not just about beauty, but I think that that's an important and okay thing to focus on and to allow for that to be a part of the dialogue and a part of survival of the more difficult and the darker, not just moments that we go through, but we all have those moments ourselves individually. Right now we're having it on a very large and communal level, but we all have our things that are happening in our lives that require stepping away and taking a deep breath and reminding yourself that things are okay and that there are other people out there that are inspiring and have been through the same thing that you're going through, and or you're in a position to be able to provide for other people in a way that maybe they can't provide for themselves. So you do that, and what's more beautiful than that? I hope that answered your question. Yes.
I want to go back to folding photographs. You had mentioned a little bit earlier when you were talking about sculpture, and so I'm just curious if perhaps the folding of the print was coming from a place of thinking about sculpture?
Yeah, I mean, the question is about folding prints and then sculpture. It was actually a show that Wolfgang Tillmans again put on. Here in New York, I saw it, I think, at his older gallery. I don't remember where it was, but he folded photographic prints and put them in plexiglass boxes. And I saw that and I was like, God damn it, that fucker. Like, it's so good and it's so obvious. And, I'd done it myself around my house, but I'd never put it in a plexiglass box and presented it. And so, we all have those art. And we all know in contemporary art, it's not who does it first, it's who does it second. So in my own way, going back to my teenage years, I still have my posters, which is really embarrassing, because most of them came from, what was the name of at the mall, mall, Spencer's Gifts. That's where my posters came from, and I'm a child of the 1960s. So a lot of them are really screechingly, horrifyingly embarrassing. And then there's Patti Smith and the Velvet Underground posters, so that's okay. Yes, man with hat.
So this question is okay. So this question is kind of personal. It comes with a little short story. We met before and you became kind of a mentor for me, whether you know it or not.
Okay.
We met before when I photographed you for People magazine at your apartment in the West Village, and at some point, you got a phone call and you were doing tea, and I continued shooting you. And then I tried to be polite, and I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, that I photographed you while you were busy." And you put down the phone and you looked at me very intensely and you told me, "Don't apologize. Just do what you need to do." And it was very inspirational for me. And it really gave me the legitimation to like really continue doing it. And at some point I'm asking myself, I'll give a small example and I'll go to the question in a second. For instance, when my father passed away, 2003, I'm hovering above his bed with my brother, and I couldn't believe it. It was like, he looked very different, obviously. It looked like his soul was out of his body. And I wanted to take a photograph, but then I was thinking, am I allowed to? Should I do it? Should I put the camera aside for a minute? And then I took it. And honestly, it's very hard for me to look at those pictures. I looked at them since then for only like maybe 4 times.
Yeah.
So my question to you is...
I mean, Richard Avedon did that. Sophie Calle did that with her mother. Christopher Isherwood's lover drew him as he was dying.
Correct.
I think, death is a really important part of our lives. And it's good that you asked that question of yourself.
Yeah.
And also maybe your brother or other people in your family were there and thought it was.
He was there and he nodded his head in approval.
Do it, yeah.
My question to you, do you ever encounter these kind of moments of like, should I not? And how do you deal with it? Do you sometimes put the camera down and then maybe regret it? Or do you always take it because it's in your blood, to record the moment?
Yeah.
That's a question.
Often, I have a lot of friends who are public figures and very well known, and I often don't want to take pictures of them because they're that's not my relationship to them, and that's there and it's amazing, but I don't want to change what we have between us that's special and that's not requiring that I document that moment. So I have documented the moment in the past, and one of the photographs that I'm thinking of is a picture of Kurt Cobain's hands when he came to visit me with his, at the time, newborn daughter. She was 1-year-old daughter at my home in Georgia, and I wanted to take a picture because I was taking pictures, but at that moment I was taking pictures of people's hands. And so that roll of film, someday I'll show it, because it's my father's hands. When he first, my father, I remember, I'll never forget, I said, I want to photograph your hands. He said, what do I do? And I said, just hold them out for me. And so he went like that. And I took the picture, but he also pulled his skin up like this, and it didn't go back down. And he said, it used to go down. And I waited until the moment when I could pinch my own skin on my hand. My father's now dead, 10 years. But I've waited until the moment when I could also pinch the skin on my hand and it doesn't go down. And, which is now, actually. And I'm okay with that. But that same role, Kurt was visiting that and staying in my guest cabin. And so I photographed him, but the only pictures I ever took of Kurt were of his hands, which to me is a portrait of sorts. Yeah. Anyone else? Yes. The bathrooms are downstairs.
Thank you. I guess I'm very interested to know, and maybe you answered it with the last question, is I really appreciate the idea of elevating the mundane so much, and I think you do that well. But I'm very interested to know how much of your work is really spontaneous and how much are you conceiving in advance? Like, are you seeing the picture ahead of time, or is it completely spontaneous and you're documenting the moment?
Both. And you'll know the difference. I realize half the room is looking over here, and I realize why now.
We can't, this
we
monitor
can't
is
see
not
it.
working.
Oh yeah, the monitor. Oh, so that's what that. I was like, that's a very quiet vocal monitor right there. The images of people with a white background one of the books I set out to pay homage to Richard Avedon in late 2019. I set out to do a book of portraits of strong women, courageous, unflappable women, and travel. My goal was to spend the whole of 2020 traveling the world and doing these portraits with white backdrops, a la Avedon. And then, of course, COVID happened, and I couldn't do any of that. And the project became something very different. But the images that are shot in my studio, clearly, I've brought someone to the studio with the intention of shooting a portrait. And so that's very specific. But a lot of the work is really just my life. As I described, it's a visual diary of my extraordinary life and the people that I'm fortunate to be able to be around. And even if it's only their hands, back to your question and your observation, even if it's just their hands, it reminds me of what it felt like to sit, and to sit with this incredible person, Kurt, I'm talking about, and have fried clams because he was on tour and that's what he really wanted to eat on his day off. So we had fried clams, and I had, heartburn for 3 days, but he got what he needed, and I have that beautiful picture to remind me. Thank you for the questions. There's one more at the back, okay.
I was just wondering about Athens, Georgia. It seems like it must have been, I'm married to a bulldog right here.
I'm so sorry.
And
I'm kidding.
And it seems like it must have been just a magical time in large part to you, maybe. And I was just wondering, is it still inspiring, or have we lost it? Or
I go back to Athens quite often. My family is based there, and the band is also based. The band is an ongoing thing, even though we disbanded 14 years ago. But the business of the band is home is Athens, and so I go back there quite often. And yeah, that's why it was very easy for me to answer. What would you say to the kids? Well, they don't need to hear from me, actually. There's a whole generation of unbelievable, inspired, creative people working in every possible medium coming out of Athens. And I to this day, I don't know what it is. I moved there when I was 18 and impressionable and young, and there is something in the water or whatever. But it is a very, very special place. Yeah. And I really don't like the Bulldogs. That's why I said what I said. I don't like football people because they're the ones who used to beat me up. But they don't anymore. Until I travel internationally. And we're not going to even throw that into the universe, are we? I think that's probably it, yeah. Are we done?
Oh, there's one.